Please join me in welcoming Dan Tuuri.
As Fritz shared earlier this morning, this past summer we all had the opportunity as faculty to do something great. We had the chance to look at ourselves and practice scholarship, to truly research a particular area of our teaching, our subject matter, whatever it might be. I made the choice at the end of the spring semester that I was going to talk this morning, and I sent in a proposal, the value of relationships. I had these great, grand plans of detailing all these scholarly works. I wanted it to be very academic. I wanted to continuously cite experts in the field. I knew we'd have people in here that were in sociology, psychology, social work, people who understood much more about relationships than I did. And then I had one of those moments where I got the voicemail, talked to my mom, and heard the message, "Have you talked to your father yet?" For those that have had that type of conversation, you know what usually follows is not the best. It's not the warmest. It's not the type of thing that puts you in the spirit to have a great summer. On May 1st, I sent in this proposal. This was going to be my work. I was going to learn all about relationships. And now, just a couple weeks later here on the 15th, I had to make some decisions that would change my summer. So I find out my great uncle, who's close to the family, is in hospice. When my own grandfather had passed, he and I became close. I held his hand during the funeral. We drove to the UP and picked him up and drove him down to Milwaukee. And as I reflected on his life, all of those memories came back to me. So I packed up the car, having that faculty schedule that Fritz talked about, where we have some of the freedoms. And I canceled the next 8 days of my schedule. I was going to go to the UP. I was going to visit with him. I was going to get to know him. You would see it was quite a drive to get up there. Halfway between Marquette and Escanaba on 41 is a small town called Kiva. 735 miles, 14 hours of drive time round trip. Barely talking my way out of a speeding ticket for one of those little villages that sneaks up on you. I get to the farm. My goal, I had a commitment in Traverse City that day, actually attending the TEDx Traverse City event. And my goal was to get to the farm before sunset. There was just something special about it. It had been so many years since I had seen a sunset on the farm, and I needed to be there to catch that night. So I start walking around, looking into some of the buildings, recalling memories from a child, looking at the river creek bed that goes through. And then I meet a cousin on my father's side who my father has never even met. This individual is the one who's caring for my great uncle while he's in hospice, and he's caring for my great aunt. As we started talking, instantly accusations came out as to why I would travel there. Why would I drive all the way to the farm when my great uncle was passing? Why wouldn't I go find him first and go talk to him? I didn't have a phone number or address for these people at all. All I wanted to do was to hold his hand before he died. I didn't get to see him on that trip. A few days later, my older sister would travel up, and by then some of the relationship issues with this other side of the family were healed, and my parents would go up and visit, and my great uncle would find out I had made the trip to visit with him. But in a 24-hour period, I had made that 14 hours of drive time to head home. It was as I sat in a parking lot of a city park in the small community of Trinary, my guess is about 1,300 residents, picking up my cell phone, trying to figure out what to do next, calling mom, calling my sister, calling my wife, that I realized I was learning about relationships. So the first lesson I felt that I had learned from this was that we don't know the heart of other people. I was in a situation where other people were saying they thought they knew my heart and my reasons for being there. And the other reason, or other lesson I learned, is that sometimes when people push pain on us, it's because they don't know how else to respond. John Maxwell, the famous leadership author, will write about this and talk that people who are in pain over-exaggerate. That they look for opportunities to overprotect. So the next morning as I'm driving home from this, I had the most beautiful stars in the sky, most beautiful sunrise. I was at Cadillac about 6:45 a.m., and I called my wife and said I'm taking my daughter to breakfast at 7:30, and then I'd go and take a 3-4 hour nap. Lesson number 3 that I came up with at this time was that every day truly can be a new start, that we have the chance each day of our lives to make it our greatest day ever. Even if we find ourselves in a situation that's painful, we can turn that around the next day and have a new attitude and be refreshed. So a few weeks later, mid-July, I'm still working on this very academic talk, but it's time for vacation. And I'll admit, the whole scholarly summertime, there were some, let's go to the community pool or let's go for bike rides as a family. I'm not going to hide that. But we took a family vacation with my wife's extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins, and now second cousins for my children to play with. Every summer for a number of years, the entire family's rented a series of cottages, so there's a lot of history. It's the last time I remember really visiting with Stephanie's grandfather. It's the only time that he ever held my daughter as an infant. So there I sit in the cabin reading, because I need to prepare this talk. And it needs to be based on what experts like Covey say. What did I realize? That this is where learning about relationships happens. It's playing with the kids. It's having fun. It's relaxing. It's unwinding. That's why we're given vacation time, so we can refresh and enter anew. So relationships, we learn through practice and applying. Relationships cannot be about one person either. It needs to be about something greater than oneself. You've probably seen the quote. Sometimes we take quotes out of context. For whatever reason, in relationships, we're sometimes fearful about admitting that we need help from other people. What we are able to do is a direct result of those people we surround ourselves with. This is my desk on a clean day, or relatively clean day, and I don't think there's anything confidential in Lotus Notes there. Otherwise, it's blurry enough, right? To the right of those CDs there is a letter I received from a student 2.5 years ago. It's from a student, Joe, late 60s, dropped out of high school, worked at the Ford Motor Plant. His goal in life was for his children to go to school. We all know first-time attendees. We know those students whose parents didn't graduate. Joe had been successful in his own children going back to school. Now it was his opportunity to go out and get his degree. So he enrolled in network administration And this entry is on one of the last days of class, where he went through and thanked me for everything I had done to help him get to his journey. But the truth is, when we encounter these students, we all know what happens. Those students like Joe, they're the ones that bring us back. They're the ones that take us through a hard day. They're the ones that when we're confused, when we're questioning a choice, when we don't know if we're doing the right thing with our lives, we look at the people like Joe and go, doggone it, I'm in the right place at the right time. So I took this photo and I emailed it to Joe. And I said, Joe, thanks. Thanks. Joe, that's your letter on the wall. And to this day, that remains on my desk. We need to value those people around us. And we need to tell them that we appreciate them. We need to make sure we take the opportunity to say our thank yous, even writing a handwritten thank you note from time to time. Last year, I had the opportunity to do a couple. I know I missed a number of people in this room that were very helpful in me becoming acclimated and comfortable here. But when I sent those notes, a few people responded and said, wow, it's been so long since someone said thank you. Relationships are built on trust. We need to make sure that everyone understands why we're doing things and that it truly is for the betterment of all, for the betterment of our students, for the betterment of our department, our institution, our vocation, whatever it may be. So now we've got the opportunity to think about what this means to us. In about 12,000 minutes, some will be back in the classroom. Not that I've been counting down, right? Honestly, I did the math for 10,000 minutes and then it wasn't quite right, so I threw in 2,000. So someone back there is calculating. I don't know if it's Victor. Are you working on that? Or? Okay, so we'll have the answer here in a second. But I think as we leave today, we've got to really decide how we're going to improve the relationships with our students, with our coworkers, with our greater community.